All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is George Martinez. Welcome to Friday Night Town Hall. And as we always begin our program, I will start off with the land acknowledgement and acknowledging that I am on Dena'ina Athabascan land tonight in Anchorage, Alaska, and the stewardship of the indigenous peoples whose stewardship remains today. Now, thank you, everybody, for joining. Now, hello, everybody. It looks like we're going live now. And once again, we're opening with this land acknowledgement, so I'll repeat that. And recognizing that I'm in Anchorage, Alaska, on Dena'ina Athabascan land, whose stewardship once was and remains today. And then also just to thank everyone and continue to give us grace as the technology. Sometimes we need some tech support. And so just thank you for your patience. And let's begin with our ad.
We live in a different world today. A different world than we had yesterday. Things may not be what we're used to. Or how we want them to be.
Time for school?
We don't know what the future will hold.
Hi, welcome to class.
But one thing I do know is we will rebuild. Together. If this past year teaches us anything, we can always do better. We can always do more. We are ready. Anchorage forward.
All right, now is the opening of our show. Hello, everybody. My name is George Martinez, and yes, I am the independent choice for mayor of Anchorage. And happy to have you all joining me. You have any questions, issues, concerns, thoughts, comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get them on. There may be a guest or two joining tonight, and we had a couple of little change of plans. I'll describe that in a second. But I just wanted to make sure everybody just came into the space collectively with each other. There's so much going on in our city. There's so much going on in our world, and the intention of this program, of this space, of using this technology is really to make sure that we stay connected to each other. It's the way we started off this campaign. I started off my candidacy with my website launching, asking people to tell me what your visions are for the city, what your hopes and aspirations, what your challenges are, and how you have experienced them. So we continue to use this platform for that purpose, and I encourage you to share any messages you have tonight. We'll see how long we stay on. This, again, is kind of like my open office hours. And I did originally intend to host it tonight from our new headquarters, but I was running a little bit late, and I decided to just broadcast right from the garage, maybe hopefully for the last time of the campaign, because we are opening a new headquarters this coming week in Mountain View, America's most diverse neighborhood, and we're opening right on 4119 Mountain View Drive. We are using and going to be renting the space, a part of the space in a co-working facility called Umoja Co-working. Shout out to Jasmine Smith and the folks that are working with her to develop that space. And we're really honored to be able to be a part of this cooperative co-working space to launch our community-based campaign out of this. And we're really excited. Lots going on this week. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those things that are happening. And then obviously our topics for the night. So I just want to encourage everybody, again, just write your questions. Let your friends know. My phone number is on the website. And people call me. I get calls from every different type of person. And usually I'll return every phone call unless they're specifically asking for something else, or it's just really, totally far bizarre. But I will answer the far bizarre calls too. And so let me just recap on a call this week that was really important. It was telling, and it's why I need your help to help get the word out about the campaign. There is a choice. There is a choice to turn down the noise. There's an actual choice with a person with a depth of background and experience with bringing people together to get things done. I mean, that's fundamental. And sometimes you got to bring an expert together. Sometimes you got to bring a community partner together. Sometimes you bring the youth together for their expertise. Sometimes you bring just a diversity of voices together. It's knowing how to do that, how to get folks to be able to work together, roll those sleeves up and accomplish things with the vision of what the outcomes could be. So I'm uniquely qualified to do that. And I encourage you to visit the website. If you're just tuning in for the first time, just coming across me and don't know who I am, George Martinez and George2021.com. It's scrolling on the bottom, and you can see more background, get to know me a little better, get to know the results that I've been able to achieve during my 4 years in the mayor's office as the only candidate who served in the mayor's office. The other candidates served in the municipality in different functions, but in the mayor's office specifically, I have that depth of experience as well. So visit the website, learn a little bit more about my campaign, my background, and also on my website we have the newly released platform page called Anchorage Forward. I want folks to know that we can move forward, we will move forward, and we're not just going to stand still. And that's part of my challenge of what happened last year is we could have done things in a very safe, creative, and innovative way, at least to be preparing for this year and for what's next to come. So we'll talk a little bit about those things as we get into some of the nature of community development. But this phone call this week, I was on a couple of debates and community forums this week. I'd love the opportunity to continue to meet people. I wish things were in person and we could, have the physical experience of participating in the democratic process through those debates and candidate forums. But we're doing what we can, and we're making lemonade out of all the lemons we're getting, and that's part of our skill, that's part of our power, and our character as a resilient people right here in our city of Anchorage. But the call was a person who saw the home builders and the the Coalition to End Homelessness. Shout out to all the people doing that important work, and Jasmine and Eric on both sides of those organizations. And it called me and said, they were impressed with my performance. They had heard, just saw my name, but they hadn't heard of me before. Went to the website and saw all these things that I did and saw some other online stuff about me. And they were like, how could they not know who I was considering how many things that I did? And what I told them was that when you're working to get things done, especially when you're bringing people together to do those things, well, your intention, especially if you're not trying to be in front, I wasn't doing any of the things that I've accomplished with the intention of getting my name out there. So you may not know who I am. That's okay. But you may know some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, that I've been able to spearhead, that I've been able to bring people together to create positive outcomes on. And so I described it that way, told her some of the things that I have done and been a part of in the city. She was familiar with some of them, started a great conversation, and we kept going. And so the point is, I take every phone call. She first called and said I wanted to ask somebody a question about me. And maybe she was a little surprised that I called her back myself. But like I mentioned in that debate on Tuesday, this past week, that from the home builders and the Coalition to End Homelessness, the thing I will bring to the administration as well is I will return those phone calls. I'll answer the calls. I'll return the phone calls. And my administration and everyone thereafter will get the message that that's what we do, that's our culture, to return those phone calls, because there are solutions in our community to some of the problems that we have today. There are entrepreneurial solutions from people who are leaning into both solving the problems, but also creating opportunities and seizing opportunities. So we will return those phone calls. We will bring more solutions together because we have a wonderfully creative and talented community here in our city, ready to lift their sleeves up, ready to roll them up and get to work. So thank you for the call. Continue to reach out to me. You have any questions, concerns, reach out to my website. But tonight, post them on the chat, and we'll get to them and talk a little bit about them. Well, first, let me just deal with community sports, and as one of the themes tonight, and primarily because I'm going to move due to scheduling conflicts with a few of the coaches and a few of the folks that were going to be a guest tonight. We're going to move that full conversation of the impact of community and youth sports to next Friday night. But tonight I want to talk a little bit about it, and hopefully I do get one of the guests that may be able to join me will get on the line. But either way, I just want to be clear about what community sports are. And if you have any thoughts about community sports, send them in now on the comments, on the threads. I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to know how you are impacted by community sports, how your families are impacted. But then I see something coming on in now, so it's relatively fast. Right on, Michael. We're going to talk some sports, Michael. So to be clear, some of the coaches and folks that were going to be on with us tonight we're gonna move that conversation over to make way for their schedule. So we'll tune in again next week, Michael. But sports need to happen, 100%, Michael. So in the summertime, let's go back. In the summertime, I had on several coaches because we were still distancing, and I wanted to use this platform to communicate and bring people together. We had several coaches on in the summertime. We had some high school football coaches. We also had basketball and Little League baseball. Now I'm a Little League dad, right? So I've got a son in Little League, and the little one, the little girl, she's in Little League too, but she's also interested in soccer, right? So we got the family doing multiple sports. My son has been involved in swimming and other things too, and it's one of the great things about Anchorage. Did you have access to these things, and it makes our community strong and great. But as a Little League dad, last summer, I mean, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of chaos, a lot of concern, and fundamentally, the importance of sports how important it was last summer were getting overshadowed by a lot of the politics. And families knew that. So we just really wanted our kids to have safe. We wanted our kids to be able to go outside. They were hunkered down for months, and there was so much confusion about what you could do, how to follow through. That there was a lot of tension in our community, and I had the coaches on, and I let them know that as an advocate of community sports, we're all walking through this uncertain time together. There are facts that we could bring forward, but there's a way. There has to be a way forward. There has to be a way to be safe and move forward. And one of the guests that hopefully will join us tonight, if not, he'll join us next week, as I mentioned, is Jaquise Sconiers, basketball coach. True Game is his organization, and he just went down and took some of our kids down to a big old tournament out of state. 250 teams playing basketball. They had mitigation. They had the masks. They had the best practices. They practiced social distancing, and then they played the game, right? And so part of the challenge that I have is there are folks who seem very rigid on all sides, and a lot of that is getting stoked up from the partisan politics. We need to have the ability to figure out how to move forward, not just stand still. And so we're past that. Now we're here. Some sports have happened. I think there's still a lot of misinformation. I think some of the policy decisions of the city position families against other interests of the city unnecessarily, in ways that didn't demonstrate policy forethought. And so we've got to reset all of it. I won't inherit the past and can't fix those things. We can only move forward, but we got to recognize what's important to our community. We have to recognize how resilient we are, and that we do have the technology, the capacity to at least provide the resources for the ability to modify what we need to and move on and move forward. I believe that. I believe we can be safe and move at the same time. It may take us a moment to reset and get our bearings, but we have to go now. And when I started the campaign, I also talked about the urgency of doing that. So got to turn down the noise and begin to move. And one of the things that I'll commit to in the administration is I believe we could, and I challenged the administration last year about this, but this is something we'll do forward. I want to commit some of the stimulus resources to being able to make sure that every kid in Anchorage will have an opportunity to play their sport without the municipality fees for the next 2 years. I want to make sure that whether it's ice time, whether it's Little League fields, let me just tell you about Little League fields. We got Little League fields. To me, where I grew up, when I grew up, I lived on a Little League field. They were in the neighborhood, just like we play baseball, right? In the neighborhoods. Davenport Fields, right in the neighborhood. Nunaka Valley baseball fields, right in the neighborhoods. These places are safe havens. They're important for our children, but they provide the opportunity for the sport and recreation, the healthiness, the team spirit, the camaraderie, the learning, the lessons, the losing, the winning, all of those positive values on every sport. But, parents are the ones that take care of the maintenance on baseball fields. We pay the dues to the league, and it's essentially parents and the league. And if you're in a league, if you're in a part of town where your economic base is not as strong in other parts of town, well, the fields look different. There's not the same level of care that's possible, and it's because we have working families that are taking care of the fields, making sure their kids can play the sport that they love and be healthy outside and move their bodies and take advantage of our wonderful summers. And it's just baseball. And I mean, every parent invests so much into the sports, but it's not only because they're kids; they recognize the value to community. There's a woman named Elsa from City View Baseball but City View merged with Nunaka Valley a couple of years ago, and so it's kind of all together in there. But Elsa, shout out to Little League, and if you're listening, shout out to Elsa and all of the parents in all sports. But Elsa had kids in sports, maybe at some point in the past, no longer has them in sports. She's just a person who is committed to supporting community sports. And there's so many people like that. These are heroes in our community. And I want to make sure that every kid knows that the city has the ability, but because that investment is in their health, that investment is in doing it right, making sure that they can play the sports, but they could do it safely. And we don't have to burden families yes, Elsa from City View. You coached her kids. Look at that, Tim Flynn. Let me put that that quote on there. Yes, and then her kids left, and she's still there. She knows my kids. She knows my son, right, from T-ball to majors. She's still around. So shout out to Elsa and all the other parents and all the other people that contribute. First, it's important. They need to happen. It doesn't matter what sport. For me, it's about doing it and getting our kids healthy and energized. And we could do it in a safe way. But it's also the ability to extend, in my mind, the classroom, because the classroom is the whole entire city. What we know now is that we're going to have modifications to everything. So we got to deal with modifications. Now, if we want to struggle over what's to modify and whether we should and not play the game, well, we could get into the politics of that. I want us to be able to bring our best faces forward, bring our intelligence, bring our diversity of experiences, bring science, and then bring the ability to prepare with resources, the tools that we can modify effectively. It's been done. It can be done. We will move forward. And so shout out to everyone. Thank you, Margot Bellamy. Good to see you here. So now go school, and this is where Margot is. That's another place to invest. It's critical. So I want to just pivot off of the community sports for a second and go into the second area of the conversation for tonight. Now, you got a particular question, a point, bring it on. But know this, the Martinez administration, if I'm so fortunate enough to get elected with the vote of the people of Anchorage, will be the biggest champion of community sports the city has had since the city had people focusing on bringing the Olympics to Anchorage. I'm taking you back. Since we had folks that imagined that Anchorage could get the Winter Olympics, well, that's the level of commitment to community sports that I want to see. And actually, before I'll pivot off on this because I believe we're going to be able to bring not only our sports back, but we're going to be able to amplify all of this. Folks may not know this, but a couple years ago, Major League Baseball began reorganizing their farm teams, minor league baseball teams. And minor league baseball, the president of minor league baseball, of Major League Baseball, came to Anchorage, Alaska. And they came when I was still in the mayor's office. And the year earlier, I drove the process through the mayor's office for the administration to declare Anchorage a play ball city. So there's some signs around town. There was a memorandum of understanding signed with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and with Major League Baseball, declaring us a play ball city. Now, it's not to say that it's only about baseball. This declaration was about community sports, but Major League Baseball was the sponsor of it. Okay, so then the year after that, Major League Baseball president came up, minor league baseball from Major League Baseball came to Anchorage, Alaska with their team, and they wanted to bring the first Major League Baseball game of minor league baseball to Anchorage, Alaska. They said there's only 2 territories left in the U.S. that has not hosted an actual MLB-sponsored game, and Anchorage is one of those places. Alaska is one of those places, and we're the city of choice. Can you imagine Major League Baseball, summer baseball? We already have the Alaska Baseball League and great talent that has come through that, and imagine Major League Baseball in the summertime. I mean, couple that with 2 years ago we had the Arms Forces Classic basketball game at the Alaska Airlines Arena Center. So we have the facilities, and it takes a little improvement to Mulcahy to get up to speed for Major League Baseball, but Mulcahy needs the improvements anyway. These are the types of investments in infrastructure that we could be making, we could be focused on. They're not partisan. They could be marginalized, but they are going to drive a new energy, a new part of our battery, and a recommitment of our community to the health and well-being of our young people through community sports. Let me post this on. Thank you, Margot. Here you go. Currently, AASA and ASD is offering, with strict mitigation, basketball, cross-country skiing, cheerleading, and hockey. Wrestling is planned for the next quarter. Thank you, Margot, because we can. We could regroup. That's why I say we could reset, rebuild, and rebound. We can reset. We can do it right. We have the smarts. We have the technology. We know how to protect the most vulnerable, and we can still move forward. I believe that, and thank you for sharing that, Margot, because it's important. It's part of our community, and it's part of the health and well-being of our young people. And I have two little ones in Little League and other sports. I want to see them back out there, and I know we all do, but we got to do it safely for everybody. And summertime is the time where we can get back. So this summertime, let's get back into it. And if I'm the mayor, you're gonna find me out on the fields. You're gonna find me out at practices. You're gonna find me out there making sure that everybody knows the municipality is covering all those fees. So Little League Baseball, we got you covered. It's too small of a fee for the next year as we reset and rebuild for that to get in the way as an obstacle for why we can't get kids back out there and why families who are economically challenged now don't have to worry about that. We got to be able to support that, and we do that for all sports. The municipal fees, we could take that on with a small percentage, a small piece. I would call it pittance relative to the amount of federal infrastructure and stimulus resources that we've already received, let alone had. And we would have did that last year if I was the mayor last year, and it would be in position for the next couple. But we'll take the summer of 2021 to get there. But that pivot to the economic opening, because all of this is about where we will reopen, and we're moving forward. Whatever people feel about the decisions in the past, and I have strong feelings about them, but I'm not running to be the mayor last year. I'm running now forward, what we have to deal with today. And we can't allow this campaign to be driven by fear and stagnation. We have to be driven by innovation, resiliency, and growth, because we will be back. So with reopening, though, why this is an important pivot from education to reopening in terms of our economy, I believe the investments into early childhood education and after-school programming are part of fundamentally how we're going to reopen our economy, safe and strong. Those investments into education, we'll come back to that. Yes, those investments into education early on are going to help parents get back to work. These are investments that we haven't made as a city, that if we would have made some of these investments into early childhood education and after-school programming, we'd be able to help parents get back to work by having at least a baseline infrastructure of how we could service those needs of families with the little ones who need that kind of programming, that kind of childcare and early childhood education support. There are over 40,000 young people under 13 in Anchorage, give or take, that require additional supports. Now, if you get to younger ones, we have 700, at least at the last count, who knows what it is now, young people on a Head Start waiting list. Children. That investment or the lack of that early childhood, high quality child care and education prevents so many families normally from getting into the workforce, for getting back into school themselves. now when you're trying to get back to work, let's say your job is like, we're open, you get back. The lack of having that now prevents families from going back to work. So it's a part of our economic rebuilding, and I believe we can do that. Now we're going to do that in a way where we're going to set the agenda, and within a year, we're going to get a dedicated funding stream for leveraging resources for early childhood education and after-school programming. And those resources, quite honestly, are 5 years late for us to be able to access, but they're here, and we'll use them, which are the local marijuana sales tax. We are one of the only municipalities who has a local retail sales tax and uses no dollars, zero money from the local marijuana sales tax for education and after-school programming, early childhood and after-school programming. So we'll change that, but we're going to bring back to the people, because this is an investment of the people of Anchorage to say, we will invest in early childhood education, after-school programming, because it helps our economy get back to full speed, helps parents get back into the workforce, and it helps our children have the foundation that we need for them to succeed in our economy as well. So let me answer a couple questions as they come up. This way we could just keep this as a real-time conversation. And let me go with Tim. And so sorry if I break a point. I just want to be able to have this chat. It's kind of it's a one-way street without other voices, and I want to make sure I do bring your voices in. I know this is getting ahead, but getting quality, affordable sporting equipment available for families is tough, specifically baseball and hockey. And hockey is expensive. Hockey is expensive, and families who know, who they understand the cost of that. Baseball is expensive too. Football is expensive. There's cost with all of these sports, right? And some families can handle that, and that's great. Some families need some help. And what I do know is that leagues and community organizations usually figure out a way to help people. Can they get more help? Yeah, they can. But these are all about public-private partnerships. Let me give an example, Tim, on this one. There's a person who probably will join us next week. He was unable tonight. He's coaching tonight. Every person that's an actual coach that was going to come on and talk about community sports is either on the ice. We had I'm going to say his Louis Imbrani. I'm not going to say his last name right, but he's the one of the administrators for the United Hockey Facebook page of Anchorage, and he was going to be on, but he's on the ice tonight. And then the other person is Jamar Hill, and this is who I wanted to talk about, Jamar Hill, because this is how it works in Anchorage. We do have the lots of philanthropic power in our city. I believe as the mayor, the job of the mayor is to bring together, again, people, resources, and find a way forward. It's not that the municipality is going to pick up the cost of all of these things. It's the municipality can convene and create opportunities to leverage. Can we find additional grants to support community sports through supplying equipment? Yeah, we can. Can we work with law enforcement to leverage those resources? Yes, we can. I have a background with working for the Police Athletic League and when I was young, out of New York as a program director. And Police Athletic League is America's oldest nonprofit organization. They do that type of work, and they leverage their ability to create prevention opportunities by these strategic investments in community sports. I've done that work internationally as well during my time as a cultural diplomat. But now I'm part of Anchorage Cops for Communities Advisory Board. We've been planning this strategy for a while, which is why I know as mayor, I will activate it this summer. Green light, go. We'll be able to get those play ball grants. We'll be able to get those other resources to support some of what you're talking about, Tim. But let me go back to Jamar Hill. Jamar is a product of Alaska baseball and went to the major leagues. There's a few people out here that went to the major leagues or professional sports from our town. I'm thinking of a friend, Mal Tosi's one of the friends that I know went to professional football. I remember watching a game with Mal Tosi. I believe it was the game he was injured. I didn't know him at the time, and then we met later on. So shout out to him and the work he's done in our community. But people like Jaquez Sconiers, Jamar Hill. So Jamar Hill went to the Mets minor league team, and he played baseball. He's a coach up here, and he has a vision for building a baseball center in Mountain View. Now, yeah, he's getting a little bit of the municipal red tape of permitting and all of those bureaucratic things that I'm committed to alleviating. I'm committed to streamlining, and I'm committed to making sure that we're getting to yes faster, and that every person in the municipality down the line gets the memo that we're going to do things. And when a person like Jamar Hill has an idea of bringing together resources to invest in Mountain View, well, we want to see what he's doing. And then he wants to invest in baseball, community sports, and another opportunity to bring baseball to young people who may not have the same resources as others do. That's his vision. Now, Jamar Hill, to your point, Tim, started organizing baseball equipment because we have a very generous city, and it's civil society. It's working outside of government. Limited government means that doesn't mean we have to stand still and not be creative. It means we have to be more creative. We don't have to blow up bureaucracy to be effective. We just go leverage that and support the people that are doing that work. Jamar went and rounded up resources, baseball equipment, and brought that baseball equipment to Polar Little League, where it's arguably one of the more economically distressed parts of town, Mountain View primarily, South Mountain View, North Muldoon. And but he brought those equipment there, leveraging that from other spaces in town where the resources were. And he didn't do it in an underhand. He went and said, I'm trying to bring baseball equipment to underprivileged youth of our city, and people in our community respond. They will. We got to give them the opportunity to roll their sleeves up and work together. That's what my administration will do. So Jamar, baseball, bringing those resources together, we want to see that vision. So my commitment, again, as a champion of community sports is exactly right, Margot. It's policies, delivery systems, sport, early learning, and lifelong health. This is all about an ecosystem. And the reason that I sound passionate is because I know about this, because I lived it as a child. I lived as an adult with this in terms of as a parent. And I recognize from my background how important it is to community development and economic development if you leverage these things correctly. So vital economic development components of this, but that vision of baseball, I just want to go back to that as I go into economic development again. I see there's another question, and I'll bring that right on up with equity in mind. Thank you, April, for it. And I just said it before, but just to remind, we're going to bring a Major League Baseball game to Anchorage, and we're going to bring the upgrades that brings to Mulcahy, and we're going to revitalize that whole entire facility. I know families that are down there now that describe and have their hockey and there's a lot of social challenges that have come to a head this year. But let's be real clear. The challenges that the city faces, a lot of them have been here for many years. They've just been exaggerated this last year because of some decisions, but because of just the nature of the pandemic and the degree of uncertainty. Oh, we're going to highlight that comment too, Margot, that degree of uncertainty. So that's why it's important that we just understand it's time to reset. It's not time to fearmonger. It's not time to act nonchalant, but it's time to reset with purpose, rebuild and rebound. And let me just give that shout out to Jamar. Yeah, that's right. He's responsible. His ticket, look at that. Baseball was his ticket out. He knows, he understands, and that's the lived experience that I get to share. Why we have that common ground, because as a child that grew up with a single parent on public assistance, baseball was my first sport, and it kept me healthy and it kept me moving in ways that I probably avoided all sorts of problems. And then when I got to high school, I played football, and creative other things happen along the way. And so, but sports have always been important to me, and they continue to be here. But here's the pledge. We were supposed to have a Major League Baseball game in 2019. I have the baseball that was given to the city of Anchorage, or from minor league baseball. They gave it to us in 2018. That said the Alaska Classic in 2019, first Major League Baseball game in Alaska. Now that didn't happen in 2019. The infrastructure, it cost about $500,000 to invest in the infrastructure for Mulcahy to bring it up to the level where it's on par. But like we said, we already know that facility needs the investment. And there are creative ways we can leverage to do that. But this is an investment we have to make to be able to leverage that energy back and go back into this economic engine of Destination Anchorage. Because not only will we get baseball here, and we'll drive other sports here, professional sports in our summertime, take advantage of our wonderful summers, but it's also about Destination Anchorage. How to keep people who visit our city here a little longer and go a little further. A little longer and a little further turns into real dollars for our city. And these types of destination attractions, festivals, big events, a week long, between ABL baseball and all the way up to a full blown game. I mean, we expected that the Razorback, the Rockies, I think it was the Rockies and the Diamondbacks were supposed to have their minor leagues teams play here. Imagine that. We can have that. I want to see that 2022. Let's go for it. Let's bring Major League Baseball and amplify it that direction as well. So that commitment is strong for me. But let's go to the next part of opening the economy. Looking for additional questions. And I want to go to April's question, which is, speaking of investments into school, how can we increase funding for schools and see that funds are distributed with equity, with equality in mind, and equity? Yes. Well, let's go to that right here. Let me take that off. Gotta hit the right switch. April, there are resources coming, but the nature of school has been fundamentally, let's say there's an opportunity to think about, in my mind, how to use the city as the classroom. I want to declare our city a lifelong learning city. It's not symbolic. I asked for that to happen. And let me just be real clear about this too. The suggestions that I'm giving, I didn't keep them to myself when I was in the mayor's office. I shared, I educated. You may hear some of these things out and about, but the reality is there are moves we could make, and it's just about now the willpower to do it. And I think folks know I got the willpower to make these moves. So the nature of extending the classroom, let's think about that for a second, and how we start to leverage assets that are near in proximity to be able to create the educational outcomes that we want to see in our city. So first of all, recognize that one of the things I did in the mayor's office was create a continuum, a chart that mapped the cradle to career pipeline. And the purpose of that was to be able to create, in times of diminishing public dollars, an opportunity for strategic realignment of resources that are going to be spent by community partners, nonprofit organizations, and other stakeholders that are invested in this work. What we uncovered was there were a lot of silos across different organizations, across different parts of the continuum. And I was part of the executive committee for or the team from the appointed from the mayor's office for 90% by 2020, and just been involved in all of these little areas and these parts of the program. And so as the pipeline demonstrated, or that graphic, that chart demonstrated that some of the providers were duplicating services. Some of the services weren't well aligned to create the outcomes that people aspire toward, but they didn't necessarily know how to get there. And by seeing each other regularly, and I convened a monthly meeting with all of these providers, we found resources that were untapped, that needed to be leveraged, that improved some outcomes and new collaborative opportunities. So with existing dollars, we can improve how they're spent when we develop a pipeline that recognizes that. Then the forward investment in terms of early childhood education, I mentioned before, April, we have money right now that the city is about 4 years late from bringing into a full investment strategy. I don't believe we should be. I'd rather not. Why are we voting on, if we're going to vote on something on the ballot this year, and we're going to put it on the ballot, it shouldn't be body cams. It should be the investment in early childhood education. And we bring that back to the people. And if we're doing it with the marijuana sales tax, I believe that the majority of people, the industry, the faith-based organizations, they're going to want to be able to support that because it's going to take a vice and invest it into a positive. We're late to that. We can get to that. We'll get that on the ballot by next spring. And 2022, we'll be voting on that. That's a commitment that I have. I want to see that happen. Let me pull this other quotes up, just other comments that are coming in. Thank you, Tasha. Like your plans when choosing a platform, you had to weigh the resources available and prioritize. As part of that process, where things were, do you think the city is currently doing well? I know I jumbled up the question. I shorthanded the question a little bit, Tasha. And first of all, I love your passion and your commitment to our community. So depends on the processes that we're talking about. But let's say this. And I'll go back to the equity question, April. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you on the equity question. Gaps in health equity and gaps in education equity are not new. We know where they are already. So if you're just new to the understanding the problem, well, maybe that's one thing. And we'll give grace for everybody to learn. But I don't have that learning curve to be able to be in a different position as the mayor. And that different position is reactionary versus responsive. And I believe that my background and depth of experience give me the ability to be responsive. What does that look like in this regard with those processes that at least I'll identify right now, Tasha, which is when the pandemic first hit, in my mind, this has to be true for the next round of resources. We must prioritize the most vulnerable because we already know where those gaps are. So when we talk about distribution of mitigation resources and PPE, when we talk about resources to making sure that the light stays on, when we talk about making sure that small businesses have supports and access, the reality is the most vulnerable across all of those constituencies were, in my mind, not prioritized effectively early on. And so we fell into a position where then we began to get reports that small businesses in Anchorage, certain small businesses in Anchorage, by and large, disproportionately didn't get access to state and federal grants. And it was like, well, what businesses were those? Well, those were the businesses that equity challenges already had been happening, which were women and minority-owned businesses and other small businesses where the owners didn't necessarily have the educational or financial backgrounds. Small business owners with those types of equity challenges. And so then the city then reacted later on and said, oh, well, maybe we should support some navigation to help those small businesses. Well, my disposition is, as best as we can, we have to make sure, again, that we're leveraging our assets, knowing that every person that applies is a potential plug for them in our city. So that means we want to bring those resources in. We have done that already when the municipality and the I-team decided to focus on the child tax credit and ask families, had you been applying for this? And families didn't even know they should apply for it. A little navigation brought in millions of dollars into our city, into the pockets of people, real money into their pockets. So that same exact way, we had to prioritize our most vulnerable early on and support them with those early resources. That's something that I think the balance wasn't there, and we reacted after the fact. With school, we already know that there's technical divide in our schools. So then when we said, well, and we know that there's high rates of chronic absenteeism in our Title I schools and some of the most challenging schools in our community. So then when you couple that with now we're doing distance learning and everybody gets a laptop, and then it's like students are not showing up, and the students that had chronic absenteeism were like now invisible, and you continue to get into those equity gaps. Well, what are we talking about? Well, equity gaps on parent support to be able to help their children, the equity gaps on the early childhood work so that now everybody's in the home. And so those things were part of what we could have been investing in early on in a way that helped us prevent the bottom from falling so far down. That's really important to recognize that. And then we hear the rates of course, the disproportionate rates of infection and illness and death across the Black and BIPOC communities. Again, those are where the investments would have been made early on. I would have rather invested in that than get into the and strong public education, then get into, for example, where that was overshadowed by just other policies and other discussions. And let me put another point onto that one, Tasha, just as another balance. We had months of heated debate, not in my backyardisms around. So there was all sorts of prejudice, all sorts of things emerged, but there was also bad policy making and framing. So we talked about 4 properties potentially being purchased, and there was all that political heat. You all remember that. Lots of political heat. And at the same time, there's like Malua Beck, for example, who have 20-bed facilities with wraparound resources and supports that have high accountability and high effectiveness. They make a difference. They work. 20 beds, maximum facility. You wouldn't even know it in the neighborhood if it's done effectively and you follow the best practices. We'll ensure that they do when we expand that model. But here's the reality. The city wouldn't return those phone calls. So the balances that we've had have seemed to sometimes operate in a space that's not necessarily built on the best listening processes. I know personally that people feel like they haven't been heard. People are speaking for them, but they need to be heard. I think in that space of being heard, there's a lot of division. There's a lot of diversity of ideas. There's a lot of ways that it's easy to point fingers because people disagree. But when I say that the soul of Anchorage is that if there's a car in the ditch, we don't ask what political party you are. We don't ask what your orientation is. We don't ask what your background is, your ethnicity. We don't ask those questions. We just want to know if you got a shovel and a rope and can you pull us out? That's what we want to know. Well, that's the same exact energy that we have to get back to. That's the same commitment that we do have to get back to in our city. But let me just go a little further on opening our economy. We're going to be queued up for infrastructure resources, Anchorage. And the Biden administration and Congress are going to be delivering some federal packages that are going to infuse not only stimulus resources, but the National Infrastructure Bank money, resources that are going to come to revitalizing and to building and upgrading old infrastructure all across the country. And Anchorage, we have old infrastructure. There's some really important upgrades that we need. But that's what we're going to do anyway. We have the port. We have opportunities of expansion at the airport that have given us the capacity to think about cold storage, light manufacturing and new economic opportunities with new industries, added value processes, things that we haven't been able to fully take advantage of. But then that infrastructure money is going to help us retrofit buildings with renewable technology. It's going to help us develop master corridors where we're talking about affordable housing. We're talking about senior-friendly living. And we have the ability to connect blighted areas like from downtown, East Downtown corridor, from Gamble to C Street. Now, if you live in that corridor and you got a beautiful home, I don't mean to call your home blighted, but the whole area is an underdeveloped area that's part of the future of what downtown's expansion will look like. But I would also argue that that starts to create a whole opportunity for us to think of regional transportation with the valley. Infrastructure money that can help us think growth, that we can grow as a city. That's the type of resources that I want us to be able to use wisely, get money in people's pocket by putting them to work, building an infrastructure that we will grow into for over the next 3, 5, 10 years. Those are critical investments we can make now. But then it gives us the opportunity to think about destination anchorage and how people always want to come to Alaska, but how we're going to now position ourselves as that global city, the crossroads of the world as we're known, but as that global block city, bringing it on in. Oh, yeah. You heard me with regional transportation, April. I'm just saying, I know there's a variety of ways that people will describe it, but that corridor, I'll go back to that with you real fast. Let me just pull that comment up. I went off on a tangent, but regional transportation with Valley and us requires an infrastructure investment on the northern corridor of our city, where I might add 2 federal opportunity zones lay. The federal opportunity zone that cuts off the northern part of Muldoon into J-Bear, and then the federal opportunity zone that cuts that whole downtown, the East Downtown corridor. That's exactly correct. Those infrastructures in both master development and public infrastructure for regional rail can be made. And that also now begins to leverage our local surface transportation in ways that we haven't been able to do. But let me go back to destination, because it's all part of this package. None of these things are going to live alone. We've got one city, we have one ecosystem, and my ability as an integration specialist, bringing things together, is going to be able to move all of this at the same exact time, because that's the urgency that we have, and we have to move. Now we want to turn this into, again, destination. Let's just talk about a few realities and truisms. We're a city on ancestral, unceded ancestral land, and you wouldn't know it in the same way that we need to be obvious as a city with the cultural heritage that's built on that foundation of our recognition of our land acknowledgement, our ancestral stewards. That has to happen, and it's going to increase that. Now there will be candidates talking about it, but one of the things I had to remind one of the candidates in a debate on earlier this week was that we're not going to be talking about exploiting our cultural diversity. We're going to be talking about harnessing in an inclusive way that diversity to be able to be the new forward-facing welcoming card of our city. So yes, and other people may say, well, we've always been a welcoming city. I remember when we were a welcoming city and we just welcomed everyone here to come. But though a lot of those folks are not even really aware necessarily that while they were describing that as their experience, that wasn't true for everybody. And that even legally on the books, they're actually still at those times and to today are neighborhoods where there are no sale to black clauses, no sales to blacks, redlined neighborhoods. Now, we may not live up to that, but that's part of the legacy of the welcoming city. So we got to move that forward. Remember the bridge builder vision of a city without prejudice, but we got to talk truth and we got to work on getting there. But if we bring that in and harness that with cultural placemaking through an Alaskan Native lens, authentically working with them. Now, in the mayor's office, I wrote the letter from the mayor's office in support of the Alaska Native Heritage Center's, one of their big placemaking grants that they did receive to do that work. So I'm familiar with it, and I'm a champion. When we also looked at placemaking downtown, how to turn trash cans into opportunities for young and youth investment, but also into the ability to keep people walking a little further. Then I created the public art map, the welcoming art map, and we created a downtown walking tour. Then we designated the Anchorage Downtown Design District. These are all things to just start to generate a framework, a foundation for what's to come. Creativity, culture, artistry, design, and colors. That's part of what we're going to move the city from, a city of lights and flowers to a city of art and culture. That's part of our trajectory. Downtown has to harness that. And I believe that's part of what's going to make our destination great again. But let me give some more answers to one more, at least, component. Now, because we're at time, and there are a couple other questions, and I'm having a good time just talking about this with everybody because this is so important to me. But I do have a few announcements to make. But just back to this nature of how we're going to rebuild our economy. I talked about education from the cradle to career, that cradle and early on, and we're talking about infrastructure and tourism as well. But let's talk about the role of the university into helping bring these things together, driving new innovation, and then also helping to create downtown for us. A few years ago, 2017, the mayor of Anchorage and then the then chancellor of the University of Anchorage, Alaska, signed a 5-year memorandum of understanding to integrate the university and the city. Thinking about that from shared services, fleet maintenance, utilities, etc. And then also thinking about the nature of experiential opportunities, deepening workforce opportunities for UAA students, research opportunities, things like the climate action plan that was developed from that partnership with the university. And that was all part of a strategy to be able to integrate more of the university. But then we also had a strategy to bring UAA downtown, to be a part of this revitalization downtown as well. And we'll do that. And now think about the strategy of investing in the UMed Innovation District. We'll do that with some of these resources and infrastructure dollars. We'll move some of the obstacles out the way and invite private investment in. There are private investors chomping at the bit. They just want to know what our commitment is and will we do the right thing to protect their investment, and will we get green light to shovel ready? The answer is yes, we will, we can, and we must. So I use the university because it's such an anchor to our community in so many ways, but thinking of how we leverage these different components and assets, driving downtown, but also driving other areas, gives us the ability to start thinking of how we move our tourists around, getting them around, and taking advantage of having them stay a little longer and go a little further. Just from downtown alone, a 5-mile radius will take you from Mountain View through Midtown, through Spenard, and just pretty much all on the periphery. We can reap a lot of benefits when we think of creative placemaking, destination anchorage enhancements through the cultural, the creative lens. Doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Each trash can with art cost the trash can purchase, which we're going to do anyway, and then $100 of paint. We put it in a school, we deliver it to the school, we pick it up again. Now there are 10 cans a year downtown, and we're going to be known for that. The most public art trash cans of student public art trash cans of any city comparably with our size. We're going to give them a victory. Point is, it's in our hands. I'm just describing some things that I know that have been involved with that are ready to go on day one. But I'm not just going to operate as the mayor from the perspective of, here's what I know, we're going to go do it. I started my campaign with a Tell George link. I'm always going to listen. I will return those phone calls. And every person in my administration will know that their job is to return those phone calls, or they will just not be in my administration. We will be responsive. culturally. We will move with a trauma-informed sense of urgency and appreciation for the grace that's necessary to be able to operate in a city as diverse with as many backgrounds and interests and points of view, quite honestly, as our city does. It's remarkable that we have that level of diversity, but it's incumbent on us now to have a mayor that has a proven background from a diplomatic, a public policy, a public-private partnership perspective, how to bring people together and move our city forward. Margo, let me answer your question. We are making it competitive. Exactly right. Your donations make our campaign competitive because, let me put another layer on this. Money is one element. Community is the most important element. It's what moves elections. People raise money so that you can now reach out to community. We are coming with community and we're raising money. We're in a very strong position. I encourage you all to send those links. And on this next piece here, let me just go out. I want to leave with this. First, text, send your contact information. Let me just put the text banner up. Text this into, share this text message with your friends. Just get them on the mailing list. And of course, your donations matter. They are important. We're breaking ground. We're breaking glass ceilings. We're breaking old ways of doing things, and we're going to bring innovation into our city through creative thinking and through keeping the space open for the diversity of the talent in our city. But let me get to this last little piece here, because I do want to leave on an incredibly good note and invite everybody to our next event that's coming up. A shout out to all of the organizers for their panels, their discussions, their forums. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be on a stage representing my community in this mayoral race. But I'm going to leave with two closing marks here. One is a video, and one is a poll that we published today from the Alaska Press. Oh, here you go. Let me put this up here. I appreciate that you were accessible when you were working in the mayor's office. That says a lot. Thank you. Faith, I appreciate that. I was accessible. Let me go off on that for a second. I was accessible as much as I could be for my programs and then for everybody else. And I want to continue that. I want people to know that that's the administration you're going to get with my administration. I'm not a know-it-all where I know too much and I'm going to dismiss you. I'm going to listen. We may disagree with dignity. Let me just go to the clip and speak right to that whole point of how we're going to operate in my administration and bring people together. Worked with Democrats, worked with Republicans, worked with independents, and anyone who's willing to roll their sleeves up and get things done, to be able to disagree with dignity, still hear each other, and find a way forward. We have no time to waste. We are a resilient city, but we are in great transition. This is a time where we have to now say what the future of Anchorage looks like is dependent on the next election. We have 36 months to reset it, rebuild it, and rebound it. All right. That's what we have. 36 months to reset it, rebuild it, rebound it. Information's on the website. Please visit george2021.com. We have events coming up. We have an open house for our brand new headquarters. I mentioned earlier, we're doing an open house this Tuesday at 4119 Mountain View Drive. Our campaign headquarters is going to be at the Umoja co-working space. Once again, shout out to Jasmine Smith and all the other collaborators in that community space, Mr. Ed Wesley, Don Mega, and others. I'm looking forward to it. You can get more information on our Facebook about that. But let me leave you with the closing poll. I'm a political scientist. We put it out there. So I believe in scientific polls. And we've been talking about science earlier with respect to how we should move forward with mitigation and just being safe. So this is an unscientific poll, but it's making it's definitely demonstrating that there's something going on in our city, and I'm excited that we're a part of this conversation. This is an Anchorage Press poll that we posted a little earlier. Now, for the last week, I'll say again, this is unscientific, but we've been holding steady. And as I'm looking at it now, I'm going to go to it right now on the press poll. And so if you are, I know some people may be a little uptight by this poll, but, our numbers went up from this morning. The poll on that says 36.0 with the second. I don't know if you can see all that. It's maybe small, but we're in first place. I'll let you determine who else is where. At least on this poll. Again, this is an unscientific poll, but we are in first place. But since that was posted, and I just refreshed my screen, and that was earlier this morning, we went up 0.7%. So we're at 36.7. Now, when I got that phone call earlier in the week, the person said, I also saw the poll. So there's energy here. I believe we're making moves. I thank you all for your time. I'll see you next week. Next Friday, we will have this real deep. We're going to bring those coaches on, and we're going to get into that because I also want to know what's happening right now and what their plans are to move forward so I can be in that ready position from day one in the administration. Let me just post this. There's some good looking numbers. Yes, there are some good looking numbers. And yes, Heather Anthony, right on. And there is a mayoral forum coming up, and Margot, I'm posting that there. ACT mayoral forum tomorrow night is a mayoral forum. In fact, by there's a lot going on. Everybody, the time is up. I'll see you next week. Thank you again. Please push the word out there. Let folks know there's something happening. There's an independent candidate in the race with the most diverse coalition of any campaign, and we are making moves. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Be safe.